Hi and welcome to the Avenue Uniting Church in Blackburn, Victoria. We meet on Wurundjeri lands. My name's Rod Pepiot, I'm the minister here. I want to read this morning from the book of Matthew, or the Gospel of Matthew. Story of Jesus sending out his disciples to pick up the work that he has been doing. Reading from Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through to chapter 10, verse 7. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like a sheep without shepherd. And he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the labourers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out labourers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out, to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 disciples. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Philip and Bartholomew. Thomas and Matthew the tax collector. James, the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus. Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news, the kingdom of heaven has come near. This story of Jesus invites us into holy imagination and discipleship. May it refresh and renew us to walk the way of faith. Actually, I found it really hard this week to write my witness to the word. That happens sometimes, and it's not always clear why. But I think this week it's had something to do with the gospel reading and my approach to it, with trying to be present to a story which is actually quite foreign to me, and yet one that didn't want to let me go. I hope that makes sense. Why is it foreign? Well, for me, this is a foreign story, like, to be honest, a fair bit of the Gospels, because Jesus and his followers lived and worked in a context so different from our own. Not only removed in time and place, but operating in a culture of wandering and transience, a culture of relying on the hospitality of strangers pretty much every day, a culture of travelling evangelists, travelling light, which is in itself something that I find hard to do, but I won't go there. I've lived in a few homes and towns and cities over the years, but it is still a foreign context for me. Now I wonder how those of you who've lived in the one place, whether it's here in Blackburn or somewhere else for many years, and I know we've got people here in Blackburn who've lived in this village area for 50, 60, 70 years and longer in some cases. I wonder how you hear it. In some senses, that cultural difference has made it hard for me to attend to this story. Not because I don't want to, but because it's strange to my ears, and perhaps yours as well. And then as I read and hear the mention of the 12 disciples, I find myself thinking about the ones that don't get named, whose faithfulness to Jesus somehow gets overlooked. We know, for instance, that there were more than 12 disciples. We know that some of them were women, including some of those who financed and provided for the little band of wanderers. We know that in many cases they didn't get named precisely because they were women. Their contribution and even their presence didn't seem important to the gospel writers. Now, it may just be me, but it may also be that others find it a difficult story for that reason as well. So I found it challenging to read and to hear. But as I said, the story didn't want to let me go that easily. Stories like songs and arts and poetry can do that to us, can't they? They touch us and they hold on tight. So I needed to sit with this one, attend to it, listen to it as best as I could, and see what happened. Now, you might be expecting that what I say next is something like, so I did that, and a great witness to the word dropped into my lap and I knew what I wanted to say. If that's the case, I admire your optimism, but I'm about to disappoint you. What I have are a few questions and a couple of thoughts. I'm okay with that. Questions are often as good as answers. But my questions are these, with a couple of thoughts to go with them. Firstly, around the issue of harvest in itself. Is harvest a helpful image to use here for our life and work as a church? A settled, firmly located community of faith in 2023. Jesus was looking for people who would join him on his mission of Jewish reform. People who would understand and practice the law as he did. I know that some strands of the modern Christian church see mission very clearly in terms of harvest, and particularly as souls won for heaven. But as we think about our life and our mission as a church, where and when and how we are located, I think my question's valid. Excuse me. Allied to that is, what do we mean by harvest? Does it simply mean backsides on pews on Sunday mornings, for instance? Or are we open to different engagement that doesn't simply draw others in to become us? I suspect that in these challenging times where people create polarity, where people create optimism, and we're almost encouraged to think about others in those terms, I wonder if reconciliation, if relationship is a better way to think about harvest. And allied to that, whose is the harvest? Or whatever image we use. Jesus seemed pretty clear that the temple and the synagogues were means to an end in his day, and the end was gathering people to attend to the way, or the kingdom, if you like, of God in their midst, to pay attention, to worship, to relate to one another in that faith, as their faith had always done. Temple and the synagogue weren't the ends in themselves. And Jesus was also more interested in pointing to the holy presence in the world than he was in being worshipped himself, which is kind of ironic when you think about what happened. But I believe this is actually an important reminder for churches. It's not about us, or not just about us. It's about how what we do helps ourselves and others attend to the Holy Spirit in us, within us, among us, and also way beyond us. Whose harvest? One final point. We're not on our own in asking these kinds of questions, and that encourages me a lot. All kinds of churches and other communities of faith ask these questions regularly, and it's important that we ask them for our day, for our place and our context. Here at Blackburn recently I've made some brief mention of the Uniting Churches Act 2 project, which is all about this kind of discernment and what it means and what it looks like as we start to move towards, well, we've got our 46th anniversary next week or this coming week, but also as we start to look beyond that. What will we be like? What will people know of us? What will we know of ourselves in how we point to holiness, to sacredness, to the one we call the Spirit of God? And I've been encouraged about that. And I want to finish with the descriptors that I found on the Assembly Act 2 website, because I like what it says about our way of being in this time. There are 4 descriptors: grounded in our faith, attentive to the Spirit, fueled by prayer, and discerning together. As I do each week, I dare to pray that what I've thought about and expressed to you helps this encounter with the story of Jesus to do what I said after I read it. May it invite us into holy imagination and discipleship, and may it refresh and renew us to walk the way of faith. Blessings. Namaste. Go in peace.